Rebirth of Hong Kong, building a global industrial empire in electronics, food, automotive, etc. Keywords of the novel. Reborn Industrial Giant. No pop-ups. Reborn Industrial Giant TXT Complete Collection Download. Reborn Industrial Giant Latest Chapter Reading. Chapter 1. Money is Good. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Money is Good. Ding 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 ding. While sleeping soundly, the nearby phone suddenly rang. Chen Jiwen woke up from his sleep, flipped over a sleeping slender humanoid obstacle, and got the phone. Hello. Chen Jiwen, who was still a bit confused, suddenly woke up when he realized that his father was on the other end of the phone. After a few words of conversation, Chen Jiwen hung up the phone. At this moment, a small hand rested on his chest. Wen Xiao, are you ready to leave now? The owner of the small hand pouted, seeming a bit unhappy. It's a little small matter, Chen Jiwen said with a smile. Can't you take me there? The girl sat up holding onto the blanket, the sunlight shining on her baby-like cheeks. It's a serious matter, Chen Jiwen said seriously. His father's company is about to go bankrupt. Although it's not a big deal, it's still considered a serious matter, right? Did you come back that night? The girl asked again. Not necessarily, it depends on the situation. I'll call you then, please pay attention to the BB machine. Chen Jiwen prepared to get up and leave. Then I'll go back to school first. I have to prepare my graduation thesis, it's just boring, the girl said nonchalantly. If you're bored, go shopping in Causeway Bay. Trust me, you won't be bored at all, Chen Jiwen said calmly. The girl he was with was named Zhang Yunxue, a soon-to-graduate college student from the University of Hong Kong. Last week, by chance, Chen Jiwen met her at first sight, and her appearance was no less than some Hong Kong sisters from the 1980s. Although Hong Kong currently has a population of less than 5 million, there are many beautiful women. The more famous Hong Kong sisters or actresses in later generations are just the tip of the iceberg that Capital has picked up. After spending 3 days under the attack of Capital-coated bullets. Okay, I'll listen to you. Zhang Yunxue looked at the newly rising sun outside and said, Wen Xiao, if you go out now, will you encounter a big traffic jam? Do you have to wait for a while before leaving? That's okay, Chen Jiwen thought for a moment and nodded, saying that his father's company had already run out of business, but he refused to ask his only son for help, and it was not a short while away. Chen Jiwen walked out of the bedroom with a small bag in hand. Although she was tired, Zhang Yunxue had long lost her drowsiness. The scenery of the French window of the Peninsula Hotel is very beautiful. At a glance, many high-rise buildings in Hong Kong come into view. Standing at such heights, it seems like an illusion that I have become a part of these high-rise buildings and can overlook other people. Although I know it's not true, this feeling is too intoxicating and I don't want to wake up for a while. Zhang Yunxue was able to attend the University of Hong Kong, and her family conditions were naturally quite good. Her father was a senior migrant worker with an annual salary of about 20,000 Hong Kong dollars. Among Hong Kong workers in the 1970s, she was already outstanding and had a decent high-end income. But the high-end suite at the Peninsula Hotel where she is currently located costs over 2,000 Hong Kong dollars per day, and her family's income from not eating or drinking for a year cannot afford to stay for half a month. However, today she has directly booked here for a month, and even if she doesn't stay, she won't check out when she is available. Not to mention, this week's consumption outside, entering and exiting various high-end places, with hundreds of Hong Kong dollars worth of steak and thousands of Hong Kong dollars worth of coats, has completely broadened her horizons, and she no longer wants to return to her previous life. The clothes hanging in the kitchen are really beautiful. What's even more beautiful is that as long as you have money, you can buy back any kind of clothes. This feeling has never been experienced by her before. Having money is really good. The Peninsula Hotel is a favorite gathering place for wealthy and upper-class people in Hong Kong. Chen Jiwen, who has been living in Hong Kong for half a year, has also met some politicians and wealthy people through various media channels. He often meets people at the Peninsula Hotel. However, others don't know him. Chen Jiwen still doesn't have any fame in Hong Kong, and even his father can only be considered a small rising star in the real estate industry. Compared to the most famous real estate tigers, he is still far behind. After passing through the gate of the Peninsula Hotel, a black Mercedes-Benz was waiting at the door. Chen Jiwen sat in and said to the driver, "Abio, go home." "Okay, there's less text," Abio said succinctly. Abio was the driver and bodyguard that Chen Jiwen had found for him. Although he had been in Hong Kong for half a year, he was not used to the changes in the left and right helmets because he had driven in mainland China for a lifetime. When he had a little bit of money, he directly hired someone to drive. Hong Kong billionaires, who drives by themselves. As for bodyguards, they can also be considered as a contingency. Since the 1970s, the Hong Kong government has been suppressing various forces, but there must be shadows under the sunshine, so it is still a bit well prepared. The time of the big traffic jam has passed, but the Central Road is still bustling with traffic. Currently, Hong Kong has not vigorously developed the Kowloon Peninsula, and the resources of the entire society are mainly on Hong Kong Island. Central is naturally the core, and there is no shortage of excitement at all times. Watching countless people hurriedly walking outside the window, Chen Jiwen couldn't help but recall his experiences in the past 6 months. Last year, in 1972, he traveled to Hong Kong. He was originally an online novel writer from 2022. After staying up late to code characters, he fell asleep in front of a computer. When he woke up again, he arrived in July 1972, 50 years ago. After crossing over, his original memories merged seamlessly without any obstacles. He was the only son of Chen Tianfu, the owner of Hong Kong Xinghe Real Estate Company. Chen Tianfu and Li Jiaqing were contemporaries and entered the real estate industry around the early 1960s. However, it was obvious that he was not as good as Li. At the end of last year, Chongjiang Industrial went public with a market value of 300 million Hong Kong dollars, while Xinghe Real Estate was much smaller in scale, with only a total of tens of millions of assets. Upon arriving in Hong Kong in 1972, Chen Jiwen felt like a fish in water. It should be noted that the novels he wrote in his past life were in Hong Kong, and he knew a lot about major events in Hong Kong and even the world in the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s. The first wave of dividends naturally came from the upcoming land purchase and milk drinking incident, as well as the economic crisis that broke out in March 1973. By utilizing some of the knowledge gained from later generations and just returning to Hong Kong after studying abroad, Chen Jiwen boasted and successfully obtained 5 million Hong Kong dollars from his father Chen Tianfu as his first bucket of gold. The subsequent operation was naturally simpler. "I went to HSBC and used the maximum allowed leverage of 5 times to long the shares of Landmark. A few months later, as in history, Landmark launched a takeover war, and its own stock price almost increased tenfold. Countless leaks flooded in, and Chen Jiwen naturally sold out smoothly. By the beginning of this year, with the addition of previous interest and some risk control operations, Chen Jiwen had earned a profit of 190 million Hong Kong dollars. After returning the money to his father with interest, Chen Tianfu was immediately overjoyed and prepared to let his son come to his own company. Together, the father and son will dominate the Hong Kong real estate industry. Chen Jiwen naturally knew the risks in the future real estate industry and quickly advised Chen Tianfu to withdraw from the real estate market. However, it was obvious that Chen Tianfu was skeptical and did not fully listen to his son's words. As a result, the economic crisis erupted, and the entire Hong Kong stock market and real estate market were in mourning. With his son's huge financial support, Chen Tianfu is not in a hurry and is still thinking about whether he can survive on his own. But Chen Jiwen, on the other hand, disregarded him and lived a luxurious life that he couldn't imagine in his past life. It's not that he doesn't want to work hard anymore. During this period, the entire Hong Kong economy has been in a comprehensive decline, and there's not much to invest in. It's still early to make bottom calls, and as for overseas investment, it's not yet time. With his little money, he can still live in Hong Kong, but it's too little to go overseas. So, Chen Jiwen started living a dull and boring life as a wealthy man. Driving a luxury car, occasionally taking a yacht, traveling to several nearby countries, and when bored, going to the university library to read books. Zhang Yunxue happened to meet her at the library. Having money is really good. P.S. Where did you find this book? If you have time, please let me know. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. A Better Life. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. A Better Life. In later generations, Chen Jiwen had never heard of Xinghe, and even when he wrote online novels about Hong Kong, he did not find information about this company. Chen Jiwen's first judgment was that 80% of the original Xinghe real estate did not survive the 73-year wave, and the remaining 20% should have collapsed in 83 years. The real estate industry is different from other industries such as manufacturing and trade. When land prices rise, people can make money with their eyes closed. Conservative people can earn less, while radical people can earn more. For example, in the later mainland, from the late 1990s to 2015, if a person can buy an abandoned building, the probability is really comparable to a lottery, and behind it is the rapid development of the real estate industry. But if encountering a crisis, it is basically a near death. The more radical the development, the easier it is to fall into it. The Chen family lives in a garden villa on CK Road in the southern part of Hong Kong Island. This is a villa area located not far from Central, which is very suitable for business people like the Chen family who are in the middle and high end of the pyramid. In this era, even Li Jiaqing lives in a similar environment, with a larger area and a better environment at most. The next step is the top-level mid-levels villa area, which is the rarest resource in Hong Kong and even rarer than the buildings in Central. If you want to live in it, you can't just have money. Dad, the grapes I just bought are imported from California, USA. After arriving home, Chen Jiwen smiled and gave the grapes he bought on the way to the Filipino maid beside him. The luxury villa property comes with a high-end supermarket that specializes in providing homeowners with various daily necessities. Many wealthy people in Hong Kong have invested in high-end agriculture, which means they have their own breeding and agricultural bases in Hong Kong or nearby Asian countries such as Thailand. Basic daily food comes from here, including basic necessities such as drinking water, milk, rice, and noodles, completely separated from the common food in the Hong Kong market. The butler of Hong Kong tycoons will not go to the market to buy groceries, and the tycoons in other parts of the world are basically the same, including later mainland China. As for other personal hobbies, each owner can also customize them privately. RB beef, French foie gras, Nordic caviar, American tuna, well-known fruits from various regions, and even Michelin chefs can be invited by air. However, the price is naturally very touching, but for the owners here, the price has never been a problem. How to enjoy life and enjoy life is more important. It's been a long time since I last ate. Recently, I've been so busy that I've forgotten. Chen Tianfu put down the newspaper and saw his son. His worried expression on his face only decreased slightly. Chen Jiwen picked up the banana from the table and sat down on the sofa, saying, "I've said you should clear the real estate project earlier, but you just don't listen. It's not that easy. Many have already signed contracts, and some are also pre-sale. If you want to withdraw, the loss will be even greater." Chen Tianfu shook his head and said. "I told you in July last year," Chen Jiwen shrugged and said. After just wearing more and more clothes in Hong Kong, he spent several hours convincing Chen Tianfu to quit the real estate market as soon as possible. However, at that time, he was just an ordinary and handsome second-generation wealthy young man who had just graduated. Chen Tianfu, who had been dominating the mall for more than 20 years, naturally wouldn't listen to him, and his extravagance was not acceptable. When Chen Jiwen made a profit by buying land and drinking milk, Chen Tianfu also believed that there might be problems in the real estate market, but he had already fallen too deep before. Although he wanted to sell, it was still a bit late. However, due to the early disposal of a portion, Xinghe Real Estate's condition was much better and it did not go bankrupt directly. However, after several months of delay, the bank's liabilities were too heavy, and the funding chain had already encountered problems. Talking about the past is meaningless. I called you over today to ask if you are interested in taking over several properties under my command. I will cash out some of the funds, otherwise, the current market prices are too heartbreaking, said Chen Tianfu. Forget it, Dad, how much money do you want? I'll give it to you. I don't want the property anymore, Chen Jiwen waved his hand and said. Chen Tianfu smiled and said, didn't you say before that Hong Kong's real estate would rise again sooner or later? Why don't you stop now? Sooner or later, it's still early. I'm not interested in facing so many troubles, Chen Jiwen and Guyu said lying down. If it's an undeveloped land, Chen Jiwen may still be a bit interested, but for a property that has already been built halfway, there are too many things to do. People who have already bought houses come to cause trouble every day and demand refunds and refunds. The construction company is urging you to pay the workers' wages, and the government may even come to force you to continue building as soon as possible. Perhaps no one is wrong, what is wrong is to make the house the biggest economic entity. Chen Tianfu nodded and said, okay, then you can lend me 8 million Hong Kong dollars first. When the time comes for the real estate recovery you mentioned, I will return the principal and interest to you. Okay, Chen Jiwen agreed with a smile. In fact, there's no need to argue between father and son like this. It's all from the Chen family, but Chen Tianfu has this requirement. He also needs to repay the money he borrowed from his son, as his son used to borrow from him. Taking out the check, Chen Jiwen wrote a check for 8 million yuan and handed it to Chen Tianfu. Chen Tianfu took the check, glanced at it, and then put it away. He asked, you earned a lot before, but now you don't have any investment plans. Chen Jiwen shook his head and said, in Hong Kong, the most profitable industry in the future will definitely be the real estate industry, but it's not the right time yet. I will enter when it's appropriate. In the 1970s, the real estate industry in Hong Kong had already unleashed its potential for the future. Capital from all sectors, including those involved in shipping, factory operations, trade, clothing, and other wealthy individuals, invested in it. Those who did not invest in it, basically 90% of them would not survive for the next 20 years. When he came to Hong Kong, Chen Jiwen did not intend to rely solely on real estate for development, but this piece of fat cannot be given up. With Hong Kong real estate as a lucrative investment, in the future, he also has more capital to develop in other industries and compete with competitors at the appropriate time. Okay, it's not suitable for doing business recently. So hurry up and find a girlfriend to get married and have children. Your mother has been urging her for a long time, Chen Tianfu nodded and said. What's the rush, I'm still young. Chen Jiwen was too lazy to answer. In the 1970s and 1980s in Hong Kong, getting married and starting a family early was just a brainwave, wasn't it? I am only 22 years old, and my kidneys are still very strong. When I can walk my kidneys, I will never let my heart wander. How can I give up on such a beautiful life? One day when the kidneys can't move, just find an honest girl who is gentle, virtuous, elegant, kind, quiet, dignified, talented, virtuous, and double D to walk your heart. You're still young, but we're quite old. If we're going to have grandchildren, you're the only one in the Chen family, Chen Tianfu said with a smile. Alright, you're nagging like mom. Chen Jiwen thought it's better not to continue this topic, so he said, how have you been at Xinghe Plastic Factory lately? End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Xinghe Holdings. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Xinghe Holdings, Plastic Factory, Why are you asking this? Chen Tianfu asked somewhat puzzled. Chen Jiwen said, I want this company. Dad, could you give me a quote? Like Li Jiaqing, Chen Tianfu also started his career through plastic factories. This is not a coincidence, but in the 1950s, Hong Kong's plastic factories were one of the mainstays of the manufacturing industry. Although not a large one, the advantage lies in their large quantity. With the advantages of cheap labor and natural port transportation, many people in Hong Kong gained their first bucket of gold with plastic factories, and then went to the real estate and stock market. The factory is not worth much money. The reason why I'm still operating it is actually because I want the former workers to have a livelihood, and I've been losing money for a long time. Chen Tianfu thought for a moment and said, if you want it, I'll sell it to you for 500,000 yuan. The factory is not valuable, and the equipment is not valuable, but that piece of land is still worth some money. You don't need to write a check to me, deduct it from this 8 million yuan. Okay, I'll find a lawyer tomorrow to hand it over, Chen Jiwen said quite formally. Chen Tianfu asked curiously, what are you planning to do when you take over a plastic factory? Plastic processing is no longer feasible, and even if you grow it, how much profit can you make? At most, it's just outsourcing to Europe and America. Of course I know that, Chen Jiwen shook his head and said with a smile. I don't have any hope either. This industry has long since declined. I want a plastic factory for other purposes. The plastic industry in Hong Kong initially focused on household goods such as wash basins and buckets. When Li Jiaqing was young, the place where he worked for others was selling iron buckets and pots. Due to the development of the plastic industry, he saw opportunities and used his 2,000 savings to borrow 48,000 Hong Kong dollars to open a plastic factory. At that time, it was the 1950s. Later, the development of the plastic industry reached a bottleneck, and Li Jiaqing was the first to create plastic flowers. Other peers also followed suit and supported half of Hong Kong's plastic industry. But the European and American economies are getting better, and the development of greenhouse agriculture is even faster. Soon, plastic flowers will be replaced by real flowers. At this time, Li Jiaqing, including Chen Tianfu and others, began to enter the real estate market, while those who continued to hold on gradually returned to poverty. In the end, they could only contract some toy brands or make plastic parts for some local household appliances in Hong Kong. That's up to you. Chen Tianfu didn't care either. He also knew that his son had billions of dollars in funds, and no matter how much a plastic factory tossed around, it wouldn't cost much. Okay, Chen Jiwen smiled and said, Mom went to RB but hasn't come back yet. No, it's not that you gave her so much money. She's gone to RB to buy a house now, Chen Tianfu rolled his eyes and said. Buying a house. Chen Jiwen hesitated for a moment and said, you really have investment vision. Their RB is different from Hong Kong, they mainly rely on industry, not real estate. Chen Tianfu is quite insightful. Chen Jiwen smiled and said, it's just now. In the 1970s, RB had indeed strong industrial capabilities, and the automotive industry had developed rapidly for 20 consecutive years, second only to the United States and Germany. In another decade, with the rise in oil prices, RB cars were able to drive American cars out of the market. German cars, on the other hand, avoided direct confrontation with RB cars by taking the luxury route, while the remaining Volkswagen accidentally opened up a Chinese replica and gained opportunities of the times. At the same time, RB's other industries were also strong, but no matter how the manufacturing economy developed, no one could avoid the nightmare of real estate and financial stock markets, and ultimately they would enter the era of nationwide speculation in real estate or stocks. The Filipino maid brought up the washed grapes, and Chen Jiwen started eating too. They were indeed delicious. California, USA has been experiencing drought this year, and although the grape harvest has been low, the sugar content has been higher. Natural fructose is much better than other sugars, as long as it is not consumed excessively, there will be no problems. This is also the advice of a nutritionist. In the villa area where the Chen family is located, there is a dedicated nutritionist who provides nutritional analysis for every customer. In an era when insulin cannot be mass-produced in large scale, diabetes is fatal, and rich people are very desperate. They want to enjoy and fear risks, so they will naturally hire professional nutritionists. Chen Tianfu also ate a few and nodded, saying, "It's pretty good. I'll buy some when your mom comes back." Okay, Chen Jiwen nodded and agreed. After staying for a while, Chen Jiwen finished lunch at home and watched TV for a while before contacting his own lawyer. In less than an hour, Lin Yanming, the exclusive lawyer of the Chen family, rushed over and the two made an appointment to meet in a nearby coffee shop. "Hello Chen Sheng," Lin Yanming said politely as he arrived at the coffee shop and found Chen Jiwen who was already waiting. "Sit down, Lawyer Lin." Chen Jiwen put down his newspaper and couldn't help it. In this era, there are no toys that can make a person pass the time. There are still more than a decade left until the first generation of Game Boy. When bored, one can only read newspapers or books, which is why the influence of global newspaper media is no less than that of television today. "Okay," Lin Yanming sat down and said, "Chen Sheng, I don't know if you can invite me over. Is there anything I can help you with? I need to establish a holding company called Xinghe Holdings, and at the same time, my father will transfer the Xinghe plastic factory to me and put it under Xinghe's name," Chen Jiwen said. Xinghe Holdings. Lin Yanming's eyes lit up, and upon hearing the name, he knew that a big one was definitely coming. As the exclusive lawyer of the Chen family, our relationship with the Chen family is naturally very good. As early as last year, Chen Jiwen suddenly approached him and said that he was planning to invest in another company's stocks in the stock market. He consulted him on some legal issues. He informed Chen Jiwen of some common legal issues, and subsequently, Chen Jiwen's long contract with HSBC also went through his review, but the specific amount figure was blocked. At that time, I didn't think much about it. Both the real estate and stock markets were booming, and it was normal to be bullish on real estate. Although it was a bit exaggerated to go long with 5 times leverage, it was not very outrageous. After all, at that time, it was unlikely that real estate stocks would fall, and even if they fell a little, they wouldn't lose too much. But with the subsequent acquisition war of buying land and drinking milk and the timing of the cash out in the matching contract, Lin Yanming naturally knew that this transaction was a blood profit, but unfortunately did not know how much the principal was at that time. During this period, he has been waiting for Chen Jiwen to take action. No matter how much investment is made, as long as there is any movement, as a full-time lawyer, he will naturally have a higher income. We have all established a holding headquarters, and the investment in the future will definitely not be small. As for a plastic factory, he didn't care either, it may just be a small start. Chen Jiwen continued, "Please help me contact the headhunting company and recruit a senior personnel team first, and then move on to the next step in the future." "No problem, I know the bosses of several headhunting companies. With the current economic downturn, it's much easier to recruit people," Lin Yanming assured with a smile. The waiter brought coffee, and after taking a sip, Chen Jiwen said, "Also, look for an intermediary company and find an office building in Central, preferably tens of thousands of feet. I want to rent it." Okay, Lin Yanming also agreed. Although the current real estate market is not good, the impact on Central is very small. A 10,000-foot central office building can rent at least 50,000 Hong Kong dollars per month, and even with beautiful scenery, it is possible to double it. Chen Jiwen's generosity further confirms his previous ideas. "Also, I want to buy a car dealership. Can you help me find one with imported car qualifications?" Chen Jiwen said again. Car dealership. Lin Yanming was stunned for a moment, this turning point was a bit big. "This is not investment," Chen Jiwen smiled and said, "I just enjoy playing with different cars." Previously complained about and blocked before the next chapter, I had to break all the way. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Central. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 4 Central. After receiving the instructions, the lawyer went back to work according to the requirements, while Chen Jiwen stayed behind and flipped through the newspaper for a while. He found that the news page in Hong Kong was really inexplicable. A cat was trapped in a tree, and even when the fire department went to rescue it, it could be published in the newspaper. He also arranged a considerable page. There are many similar trivial matters. Either it is a rumor in the entertainment industry, but it seems relatively gentle, unlike the paparazzi style of later generations. The rest are some novels serialized, but I am used to reading fantasy web novels in later generations. This kind of martial arts novel has long lost interest. I placed the newspaper on the coffee shop shelf and borrowed a phone from the bar. After finishing the call, I rang a few times and hung up. Then I flipped through several other books around me. In no time, the phone rang and it was Zhang Yunxue who called. In 1973, Motorola should have just invented the world's first commercialized mobile phone, which was the predecessor of the phone, the Big Brother. It is obvious that Hong Kong does not have this thing to buy, and even if it has it, it is useless. There is no infrastructure. Even if the Apple 14 reaches 1973, it cannot make any phone calls. Fortunately, there are still BB phones available. The recipient can receive the message by making a phone call, and then the BB phone owner will call the nearest phone company to inquire about the number, and then call back. In the eyes of future generations, this is a very troublesome operation, but now people think it is very good and advanced. After all, it can still find people within half an hour. I still made an appointment at the previous hotel. When Chen Jiwen arrived, Zhang Yunxue had just returned. In just half a day, she bought a few clothes and a pair of genuine leather high heels. After putting them on in front of Chen Jiwen, she specially rotated her body a few times. Her previous school was Latin dance, and her figure was great. After a few days of being carefree, Chen Jiwen received the news. We have found a suitable office building in Central and need to wait for Chen Jiwen to personally confirm. The scenery is really good, son. How big is this area? In an office building in the core of Central, a middle-aged lady with elegant clothes and beautiful hair stood in front of the French window, looking at Victoria Harbour not far away, and said with a smile. There are 2 floors up and down, about 50,000 feet, about 5,000 square meters, Chen Jiwen replied with a smile. Lin Yanming introduced several office buildings, and he only looked at the location before deciding which one to rent. After negotiating the price, he quickly signed the contract because if it didn't go any faster, it was likely to be gone. Although the real estate crisis in 1973 was severe, and housing prices, stock prices, and rent prices plummeted in various ways, it hardly affected the buildings located in the prime area of Central, especially the most famous Crown Prince building under this land acquisition. The Crown Prince building was built in 1965 and is considered a relatively new building in Central. Although it only has 27 floors, it occupies a large area, with each floor measuring 25,000 feet, approximately 2,500 square meters. After the decision was made, Chen Jiwen came here with his parents to watch, and coincidentally, his mother Wu Xiuling had just returned from RB. Not bad. Renting such a large area in this place gives people the first impression of strength. I heard that ship King Bao Yugang's global shipping is also located in the Prince's building. Wu Xiuling asked. Yes, they are on the top 6 floors, Chen Jiwen nodded and said. The 2 floors I rented myself are the 16th and 17th, and the view is already very good. The highest floor, the 27th, is obviously better. Although Hong Kong is dominated by British-owned foreign firms, these firms have been established for over 100 years. Except for Swire Pacific, the equity of several other firms has long been dispersed, and even Swire, whose family has been inherited for 100 years, the equity within the family has also been dispersed. And the newly emerged Chinese billionaires are all major shareholders of their own companies. Although the company is much smaller in scale, in terms of personal value, British capital may not necessarily be able to compete with some Chinese newcomers. In April of this year, American media ranked the world's richest people, with Bao Yugong's net worth ranging from $700 million to $1 billion, becoming the new richest man among Chinese people. His reputation was so great that he quickly surpassed the 4 major foreign companies. Countless Chinese in Hong Kong take pride in Bao Yugong. Chen Tianfu asked, "You're renting such a large office building with such a good location. What kind of business are you planning to do? You're not really planning to do plastic, are you? There are probably not many plastic factories in Hong Kong whose profits can match the rent of this office building." "Of course not," Chen Jiwen said with a mysterious smile. "How much is the rent here?" Wu Xiuling asked curiously. She still doesn't know the price. "A month, about 50,000 Hong Kong dollars, Chen Jiwen shrugged and said. "The rent for Grade A office buildings in central Hong Kong is around 5 Hong Kong dollars and 60 cents per foot per month, and the Crown Prince building, which is the highest quality office building under landmark, is normal to double its price. A monthly profit of 50,000 Hong Kong dollars cannot be achieved by most factories in Hong Kong, let alone plastic factories that can only contract production. It's quite expensive." Wu Xiuling was a little surprised, but she didn't say anything more. To do big business, one must show off their strength. Working in central Hong Kong is a symbol of strength. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Business Planning. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Business Planning. What are you planning to do? Chen Tianfu asked curiously. Although his business has been troublesome since taking his son's money, at least there has been no crisis, which has made him feel more relaxed. With such promising prospects, his son can naturally retire. On the other hand, he is also very concerned, afraid that his son is too young and may be hit by investment failures. Chen Jiwen smiled and said, "I can't say it now. I'll tell you later, but it's not a bottom line. It has nothing to do with Hong Kong's stock market and real estate. Okay, be careful yourself." Seeing his son not wanting to say anything, Chen Tianfu didn't ask further. He just said, Hong Kong's business families, whether British or Chinese, I'm not sure about their first bucket of gold. But after becoming a prominent figure, they basically don't put their eggs in one basket, nor do they use all their strength to gamble." Understood. Chen Jiwen naturally knew what his father meant, but this was actually a misconception because those who didn't like gambling survived, while those who liked aggressive investment survived 10 crises and made a lot of money. However, as long as they lost once, they would lose everything and naturally won't continue to exist today. At present, many families in Hong Kong will disappear in the future for the same reason. "Alright, don't nag anymore," Wu Xiuling said. "Go and see other places. You should also leave me a room here in the future. When I'm tired from shopping, come and sit down." "No problem, leave a big office for you," Chen Jiwen said with a smile. 5,000 square meters is not small for office space, but it doesn't take long to walk around. After walking, a family of 3 takes the elevator directly to the 5th floor of Prince Edward Building. The 1.5th floors of Prince Edward Building are one of the busiest commercial circles in Hong Kong. Before the opening of Harbour City, Hong Kong's shopping malls were mostly located within the building, with several floors below and office buildings and hotels above. After some shopping and lunch, Chen Jiwen also saw off his parents and returned to the 17th floor office. The previous owner of these 2 floors was a local insurance company in Hong Kong, which is said to have good business and is also preparing to go public. Unfortunately, a real estate crisis caused a thunderstorm in the insurance company's investment business, and the owner ran away overnight, not knowing which country to go to. But the benefits were earned by Chen Jiwen. In order to attract customers, the previous insurance company spared no expense in decorating the headquarters. All kinds of office supplies and sofas were the best, and as long as some green plants were moved in, everything would be perfect. Li Haonan, a newly recruited HR candidate, has already joined the company. During this period, many companies in Hong Kong have gone bankrupt or laid off employees, and there are a large number of unemployed elites in the market. Star River Holdings has just notified its headhunters and has been searching for many potential talents. Chen Sheng, Li Haonan said politely in formal attire. Sit down, Chen Jiwen waved his hand with a smile. Li Sheng, you've been working hard lately. You need to establish the most basic team in our company first. With the company's appearance, I can start doing business. Sure, Chen Sheng, let's call me Lao Li, Li Haonan smiled and said. Sheng is a respectful title, and it's okay for ordinary people to call me Lao Li. My own boss is not good at it, and being polite is his business. It's okay to call me Lao Li once or twice. After a while, I need to know if I can bear it. Okay, let's call it Lao Li, which would be more comfortable to call. Chen Jiwen smiled and said, last time during the interview, I also mentioned that our main business below is in the manufacturing industry. I have a plastic factory with a decent scale, so we don't need to worry about things over there. What we need now is talent who is proficient in factory manufacturing research, manufacturing acquisition evaluation, and experienced sales in the manufacturing industry, especially those with deep relationships with European and American customers. The more people in this area, the better. After arriving in Hong Kong, although Chen Jiwen knew that with only his knowledge of key events in later generations and proper operation, he could become a super rich, comparable to the other 4 major families in Hong Kong, and even achieve higher accomplishments. But deep down in his heart, he didn't want to live his life solely by speculating in real estate and finance. After all, he had already gained financial freedom, and his life had to have some other pursuits, such as becoming an industrial tycoon. It is difficult to create such a wealthy individual in the local environment of Hong Kong. The same applies to commercial environments as to what kind of environment in nature creates what kind of organisms. Hong Kong is a city that is too small and has too few people. A shortage of people represents a small market, severe domestic demand, and a shortage of higher education institutions, indicating a lack of talent. Without strong intervention, it is difficult for high-end and even mid-range manufacturing industries to develop. But it's not impossible either. For example, the manufacturing industry in Pe County is very good, but it has been supported by the Pe County government for many years. However, for various reasons, the Hong Kong government does not care about the manufacturing industry at all, and various policies are aimed at selling more land to make money. This is the final blow to the manufacturing industry, which naturally completely destroyed Hong Kong's manufacturing industry. The current Chen Jiwen naturally cannot compare to the Pe County government, but he has a strong prophetic advantage and his direction is not wrong. Moreover, the profits he earns from real estate finance and other aspects in the future can also feed back the manufacturing industry. Moreover, the development of manufacturing industry is not for Hong Kong. Neither the market nor the manufacturing base can be located in Hong Kong. With a large scale of manufacturing, the greatest benefit for Hong Kong is for itself. However, the current scale of manufacturing industry in Hong Kong is still good, which meets the conditions for him to grow from a young age. If possible in the future, it can also leave a piece of fat for Hong Kong. Okay, no problem, Li Haonan promised. Okay, you can go ahead and do these things first. If there is any progress or you can't solve it, just call me. Chen Jiwen nodded and said, the company is just starting and doesn't need to assign too many tasks. The first step now is to improve the company structure. After leaving the Prince Edward building, Chen Jiwen arranged for ABO to drive to the Xinghe plastic factory located in Yuen Long. The factory was built in the 1950s and was not a good building at the time. After so many years, it looked very dilapidated. The equipment inside is naturally antique. Chen Jiwen glanced at it a few times and was too lazy to take a look. He pulled over the factory director surnamed Wu and said, "Old Wu, I have replaced all the equipment in the factory with new ones. You don't have to worry about the money. All replaced. Director Wu was stunned for a moment. The old equipment will be used, and the factory has already lost money. Why do we need to replace it with new equipment? Does the new boss have a large number of new orders? Chen Jiwen naturally did not know the thoughts of others. Small injection molding equipment has been localized in Hong Kong, which is also one of the important achievements of Hong Kong's manufacturing industry. After localization, the price is also very low, and Chen Jiwen does not care about investing this amount of money. After standing on the highest floor of the factory office building, Chen Jiwen looked at a large open space next to him and thought for a moment before saying, "Old Wu, is that piece of land over there empty?" Following the direction, Old Wu saw only a few elderly people planting vegetables and said, "It's empty. A few months ago, I heard that the Hong Kong government was preparing to auction it off. Later, when the economic crisis broke out, the matter was shelved, and no one wanted this piece of land anymore. We need it," Chen Jiwen said. "Lao Wu, you go and contact the government. I want to buy this piece of land." "Chen Sheng, should we buy it to build a workshop?" Old Wu asked curiously. "That piece of land is even larger than their entire factory building. Does the new boss really have a large number of orders in his hands?" Chen Jiwen shook his head and said, "No, I want to build a large warehouse." End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Layout of the First Oil Crisis. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Layout of the First Oil Crisis, Large Warehouse. Old Wu couldn't figure it out, but he didn't dare to ask more. Actually, it may not be necessary, but it still needs to be prepared. Chen Jiwen thought for a moment and said, "Old Wu, find 2 more professionals who are proficient in fire protection. I may need this warehouse in the future." "Okay. If you can't figure it out, then don't think about it." Old Wu readily agreed. Unlike the protagonists in later online novels who are reborn or busy as dogs after crossing time, Chen Jiwen has always been very leisurely. During his first year of travel, apart from laying out land, he basically did nothing serious, just playing around, arranging flowers and birds, feeling uncomfortable. During this period, Chen Jiwen often played poker with Zhang Yunxue and others. Occasionally, there was a landlord fight. Once, Zhang Yunxue accidentally brought an extra person, and Chen Jiwen even taught a few people how to play a tractor. After a period of time, the poker players played more and more times. They became familiar with each other's moves and routines, but found them uninteresting. Zhang Yunxue changed another group of people and started over. Playing poker can be said to be endless, only those who can't find anyone to play with will find their phones more interesting. While young, of course, it's important to have more fun. As for career, it's impossible not to do it. It's just a coincidence that there isn't a good direction during this period, and even if there is one, it's still in the preparation stage and won't be very busy. However, in July, things finally turned around because the first oil crisis is coming. Due to some international reasons, in a few months, international oil prices will directly rise from $3 per barrel to $11 per barrel. This price may be very small in the face of future oil prices that often reach $100 per barrel, but in this era, the impact can be said to be groundbreaking. All governments around the world, including OPEC, have learned about the power of oil for the first time. Without enough oil, even the best economy has become a castle in the air. After the first oil crisis, industrial production in the United States decreased by 14%, while RB's industrial production decreased by more than 20%. Productivity growth in all industrialized countries has significantly slowed down. The economic growth rate in 1974 was 0.5% in the UK, 1.75% in the US, and 3.25% in RB. Simply put, the global inflation that lasted for over a decade since the 1970s, which was suppressed by the Federal Reserve raising interest rates to nearly 20% and the initial achievement of global trade, was due to two oil crises that caused significant changes in the living habits of Europeans and Americans, and change meant opportunities. This is also the opportunity for Xinghe to wait for the development of the manufacturing industry. The sharp rise in oil prices will have a serious impact on manufacturing factories in Hong Kong, and changes in demand in Europe and America will inevitably lead to a market gap for some products. Unfortunately, there were no oil futures in this era, even in the second oil crisis of 1978. It was impossible to long oil prices, as there was no such path. However, as an important industrial raw material, oil plays a very important role, and its role gave Xinghe the opportunity to make use of it. There are still 3 months left until the oil crisis, and it's time to prepare. Xinghe Plastic Factory has started negotiating with the Hong Kong government to buy the land next door. The Hong Kong government is currently facing a shortage of money, and although the meat is relatively small, it is still stronger than nothing. It is estimated that even with further bargaining, the deal can be made. On the other hand, at the headquarters of the central office, Li Haonan has started to contact several headhunters to recruit throughout Hong Kong and even in the Bay Area. Interviews will be held one by one, and those who meet the requirements will consult Xinghe. In August, Xinghe Plastic Factory had already purchased the nearby industrial land. Xinghe directly arranged for Lin Yanming to find a construction company and build a large warehouse. The internal fire protection level was built according to the level of the hazardous chemical warehouse, but he did not apply for the storage of hazardous chemicals. Xinghe did not place hazardous chemicals, but only carefully considered for fire protection. After all, it only cost tens of thousands of Hong Kong dollars more. The team at the headquarters of Xinghe Holdings is gradually moving towards the most basic improvement, with finance and administration already in place. Xinghe has also recruited more than 10 professionals as requested. Currently, the entire team is analyzing the manufacturing factories within Hong Kong for future acquisitions or other forms of cooperation. After the basic preparations were completed, Xinghe personally arranged a meeting with a guest at the presidential suite of the Mandarin Oriental Hotel. Mr. Chen, although he has been in Hong Kong for more than 10 years and has stayed at the Mandarin Oriental Hotel many times, this is still his first time visiting the presidential suite. "I really appreciate your generosity," said a white old man with a very standard American English smile. Xinghe smiled and said, "When talking about business with someone, you naturally have to choose what kind of occasion, right, Mr. Smith? I'm just taking up the light of Dow chemistry, the rest is just an ordinary person," Old Smith chuckled lightly. Mr. Smith is humble. Dow Chemical is one of the top 20 business giants in the United States, and few people in Hong Kong probably know about it, Xinghe said with a smile. Today, Xinghe invited the person in charge of Dow Chemical, the largest chemical giant in the United States, in Hong Kong. Although Hong Kong is not large in size, the manufacturing industry has a high density, and the plastic industry is one of the main industries. Therefore, giants such as Dow Corning and Dow Chemical also have offices here, specifically responsible for selling plastics and other chemical products. Those who know these are basically people in the industry, while other Hong Kong people have no idea what Dow is. It is not surprising, however, that even in the internet age in the future, these giants are very low-key, and unrelated people are not clear about it. But it is these giants who produce indirect civilian goods that have mastered a lot of basic materials and technology, which is the cornerstone of the industrial development of large countries. Smith nodded and said, "Mr. Chen, I'm not sure if you can ask me to come here today. Is there anything I can do to help you with?" Xinghe also said quite formally, "Mr. Smith, I would like to purchase a batch of plastic particles, all of which are here. Please take a look first." Plastic particles. Smith thought it was strange at first. Just go to his company to buy plastic particles. Even if the quantity is a bit large, you can still have a meeting at the company. It's too luxurious to schedule a presidential suite worth several thousand Hong Kong dollars a day. But when he saw the list on the note, his face changed and he said somewhat incredulously, "Mr. Chen, do you want to buy 20,000 tons of plastic particles?" "Yes, 20,000 tons, Chen Jiwen said formally. Oil cannot be hyped up, and its main derivatives, diesel and gasoline, cannot be hoarded. They are both flammable and strategic materials, and the Hong Kong government will not agree to hoard them. The cost is outrageous and the danger is very high. Even if the Hong Kong government agrees and there is infrastructure to reserve them, if there is an oil crisis in the future, Western, civilized people will come and borrow them. Are you moved? But plastic is different. This thing is solid, convenient for storage and pollution-free. Plastic is also one of the main synthetic products of petroleum, with great industrial value. Cars, household appliances, and household appliances can all leave plastic. Most importantly, Chen Jiwen chose a type that is difficult to burn and has a lower risk. Of course, preparations need to be made, and fire protection facilities still need to be prepared. In the original history, after the outbreak of the oil crisis, the price of oil increased by 3.6 times, while the price of plastic increased by about 3.3 times. Even if it cannot be compared, it is not much different. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. The Fantastic Smith. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. The Fantastic Smith was still somewhat incredulous and asked, "Mr. Chen, 20,000 tons of plastic is enough to last the entire Hong Kong market for a month, and this price, based on market prices, would require at least 26 million Hong Kong dollars. With so many orders, Mr. Smith, shouldn't you give a 50% discount?" Chen Jiwen smiled and said, "I think 13 million Hong Kong dollars is enough." This is not Chen Jiwen's big mouth, but a return to normal prices. Currently, the price of plastic particles in Hong Kong is around 0 Hong Kong dollars and 60 cents per pound. At this price, the value of 20,000 tons of plastic particles is around 26 million Hong Kong dollars, but this is only the price in Hong Kong, not the normal price worldwide. There are many plastic factories in Hong Kong, but none of them are large in scale. Chemical raw materials cannot be produced locally in Hong Kong, which means that no plastic factory is qualified to negotiate with distributors. The price of plastic on the island is much higher than in other regions. The main industry in Hong Kong, the plastic industry, is basically working for a few plastic agents. Low-end manufacturing is like this, sandwiched between strong customers and strong suppliers, and can only rely on cheap labor to make some profits. However, the price of plastic overseas is not even half that of the Hong Kong market, but purchasing such a large quantity at once certainly requires a discount. Mr. Chen was joking. If Mr. Chen could provide plastic particles at this price, Dow would be willing to purchase them all, as much as they want. Smith kicked the ball to Chen Jiwen in just one sentence. Chen Jiwen smiled and said, "Mr. Smith, consider this order. It's comparable to Dow's performance in Hong Kong for a year. I hope to receive another quotation from Mr. Smith within a week." Chen Jiwen is not in a hurry at all. It is still a buyer's market, especially after the Hong Kong economic crisis, which has also affected the manufacturing industry. Many manufacturing bosses have also become leaks during the previous peak period, causing problems in the capital chain, which naturally affects factories. At the same time, banks also have a close relationship with the manufacturing industry. The real estate crisis has affected banks, and banks will naturally tighten their monetary resources. Smith thought for a moment and said, "Mr. Chen, I will carefully consider this matter, but what kind of discount I need to apply to headquarters? For such a large amount of transaction, I need sufficient evidence to prove that this transaction will be genuine." "That's for sure." Chen Jiwen took out a file bag from the package, took out the internal documents, and handed the top one to Smith, saying, "This is the bank account fund certificate issued by HSBC. I think this data is sufficient. If you doubt the authenticity, you can go to HSBC to investigate the authenticity of this document, but I can only provide you with a copy. Enough, Mr. Chen is truly a hero born in youth. Smith looked at the proof of the 60 million Hong Kong dollar deposit issued by HSBC in his hand and couldn't help but believe that this transaction was true. However, he still asked with doubts, Mr. Chen, I don't doubt the authenticity of this transaction. I just want to ask, what are you doing with buying so many plastic particles? This is my personal trade secret. Chen Jiwen pointed his hand towards the north. North. Smith suddenly understood. What about the north? Chen Jiwen immediately expressed confusion. I understand, I won't ask again. Smith almost couldn't suppress his joy. He had some doubts before. Although Hong Kong is known as an Asian manufacturing base, it also excludes RB. It is a city selected among the dwarfs in South Asia, but no matter how developed it is just a city with a population of over 4 million. Although the plastic industry is quite large, the total demand is there, no factory would buy so much plastic at once. At this moment, it's strange for a Hong Kong person to suddenly buy 20,000 tons of plastic at once, but if it's for serving the northern mainland, 20,000 tons. It's probably not enough for the northern region to consume in a day. After all, with such a large area and a large population, a household can consume millions of tons of plastic by buying a plastic basin or bucket. Smith suddenly realized that he had encountered a big fish today. If he could catch the northern line, it would be a huge strategic advancement for the entire Dow, not to mention a golden opportunity for him personally to change his life. This seems to explain why the young man in front of him has 60 million Hong Kong dollars in his bank account. It should be noted that there are not many listed companies in Hong Kong with a total market value of over 100 million, let alone savings. However, if he is the spokesperson for the North, it is normal. Although the North is relatively poor, the power of a country is unimaginable. Last year, the North ordered 10 planes from Boeing and also purchased a large number of heavy industry production lines from Europe and America. The total value exceeds $1 billion. Large orders serve politics, and raw material orders naturally rely on market methods. Although the northern region is an oil-exporting country, heavy industry is lacking. Even if plastic can be produced, it will definitely be difficult to meet the needs of various industries in terms of quality. Therefore, we want to purchase through the only window in Hong Kong. Smith suddenly felt that he was too smart, and in less than half an hour, he had figured out all the details of the matter. The most important thing now is to attract the young people in front of us. Plastic orders are no longer important. If they are cheap, they will be cheap, and if they are discounted, they will be discounted. As long as they can connect with high-level executives in the North and engage in long-term transactions, they will be the hens that lay golden eggs for a long time. I didn't say anything. Chen Jiwen leisurely drank his coffee, indicating that he really didn't say anything. Mr. Chen, I will immediately report this matter to the U.S. headquarters and provide you with a satisfactory response in the shortest possible time. Smith saw a stack of paper that Chen Jiwen casually placed on the table, all of which were copies of HSBC's deposit certificates. These were obviously intended for others, who were naturally competitors of Dow, such as Dow Corning, Mobil, ExxonMobil, Shell, and so on. These petroleum or chemical giants all have offices in Hong Kong. There are too many companies in the world that can produce plastic. Although the brand is not as big as Dow, if it is only for civilian use and the quality requirements are not high, Dow does not have much advantage. In Hong Kong, under normal circumstances, they would raise prices together and form an alliance of interests. However, this time, the trading target is the North, which is completely different. Tens of thousands of tons are just the starting point. If long-term cooperation can be achieved, perhaps in the near future, 1 million tons per year will be ordinary, and plastics may only be a small business, with oil and chemicals being the big players. How could such a large market be shared with others? Besides, Hong Kong's plastic factories can only collaborate with a few of them, which is why they can monopolize. But a country wants to purchase plastic, a commonly used material, and wants to monopolize it. How could it be possible for you to collaborate with hundreds of large petrochemical factories around the world? Okay, I'm waiting for good news from Mr. Smith. Chen Jiwen nodded and smiled. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Determination. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Determination. In the following days, Chen Jiwen met with chemical giants such as ExxonMobil, Dow Corning, and placed orders for 20,000 to 50,000 tons of plastic particles for each company. The process was similar to the previous meeting with Smith. He presented a deposit certificate from HSBC and, when asked why he made the purchase, pointed to the north, implying that everything else was gone. It's none of his business how these people understand. 2 weeks later, 8 companies including Dow Corning, and Mobil signed purchase agreements with Chen Jiwen for tens of thousands of tons of plastic particles, totaling 250,000 tons. According to Hong Kong's price, it should be 300 million Hong Kong dollars, but in the end, their transaction price was set at 225 million Hong Kong dollars, including shipping costs. Chen Jiwen paid 1/3 of the deposit, which is 75 million Hong Kong dollars, for delivery 6 months later. In order to be safe, Chen Jiwen requested a penalty of 3 times the price of the goods, which was difficult for companies such as Dow and Mobil to accept. However, later on, considering that this was an indirect business with the country, failure to deliver on time could affect their industrial development plan. Chen Jiwen set such a high penalty. From a risk perspective, it was almost risk-free, just plastic particles. How could it be impossible to deliver the goods? Oil can be easily obtained through practice. After both parties agreed on the contract, Chen Jiwen also requested a special indication that this contract could be sued in the United States. Considering the people behind Chen Jiwen, several companies also found it understandable. At this point, the layout for the first oil crisis has been preliminarily completed. We are waiting for the price of plastic to increase more than 3 times with the oil crisis, and then we can resell it. Even since the delivery time is 6 months later, the oil crisis has already erupted. These plastic particles may not really need to enter Hong Kong and can be resold at a high price. Building a large warehouse in Yuen Long is also for backup purposes, so we won't lose money anyway. Even for industrial land, if Hong Kong emerges from the real estate crisis in a few years, the price will still double several times, and at that time, its future factories can also use it. The large-scale layout is completed, and Chen Jiwen has purchased several industrial land and built several industrial office buildings. The current prices are relatively cheap, not to hype up industrial office buildings, but to consider that he also really needs to use them in the future. For other investments, people were arranged to acquire the stocks of Zhulongkang in the stock market. Starting from last year, Zhulongkang began a 10-year plan to invest 2 billion yuan to build a harbor city. However, due to its conservative business strategy, Zhulongkang did not borrow on a large scale, but instead began to expand and raise funds in the stock market, which led to a decline in Zhulongkang's stock price. However, it is only at the beginning now that Zhulongkang has not yet expanded its holdings. We can't acquire too much either. In September, the heat in Hong Kong finally dropped slightly, which made Chen Jiwen feel much more comfortable outdoors. The first few months were quite uncomfortable, although the temperature in Hong Kong was not very high in summer, the humidity was too high, and magic attacks were too uncomfortable. Wow, it's so beautiful! Zhang Yunxue exclaimed as soon as she entered a car showroom in Jinzhong. Not as beautiful as you, Chen Jiwen shrugged beside him. Zhang Yunxue looked back strangely and said, "What, I'm talking about cars." Chen Jiwen ignored and smiled, saying, "All the cars here are mine. You can choose one to drive." After 2 months of searching by Lin Yanming, he finally found a suitable car shop in Jinzhong. The shop owner was a pitiful person. While drinking milk in front of him, he spent a lot of money buying milk stocks and then went to exchange them for land purchase stocks. However, he didn't expect that after the milk was purchased by land purchase, the stock market plummeted again. As a result, decades of savings were destroyed and he owed a lot of debt to the bank, so he had to become a seller. Chen Jiwen also secured the property of this car dealership and store at a very favorable price. Really, any car is fine, Zhang Yunxue said happily. In her free time before, she often used to ride Chen Jiwen's car and drive it, getting addicted to it. It's just that Chen Jiwen's car is too big, and her height is not enough. Although the car feels comfortable to drive, it always feels too tired after a long time. Chen Jiwen nodded and said, choose whatever you want, as long as you like it. Chen Jiwen actually has little interest in supercars and ultra-luxury cars of this era. Based on his later aesthetic, he just wants to say what they are. However, in a normal BBA, there are still some that can catch the eye. Although it is a bit square and the center console of the car is very simple, there seem to be no other shortcomings, especially in terms of power. Due to the cheap oil price, various 8-cylinder and 12-cylinder engines are everywhere. This car dealership specializes in importing cars, ranging from cheap Toyota Volkswagen to middle-class BBA, providing Chen Jiwen with a wide range of choices. It should be noted that in the era without the internet, choosing a car is a very troublesome task. In the end, Chen Jiwen chose Mercedes-Benz's first-generation S-Class, which was just launched last year, and returned the old Mercedes-Benz to his father. Another advantage of opening a car dealership is that it allows his license plate friends to choose a car, especially Zhang Yunxue. She often takes the initiative to find new license plate friends for him, so that she can have her own car, which will be much more convenient. Zhang Yunxue wandered around, followed by a salesperson who enthusiastically introduced the advantages and disadvantages of various types of cars. As a salesperson, she usually only introduced the advantages of cars, but when the boss brought people to pick a car, the disadvantages had to be explained clearly. Fortunately, she had similar experience before, and now she can answer with ease. Chen Jiwen sat aside and read an English magazine, which was a professional book and magazine dedicated to introducing various types of cars. At the same time, there were also some contents that introduced the sales, development, and new car model plans of the global automotive industry, which made him very interested. The automotive industry is the crown of global industry and one of the most influential industries in the social economy. It's not just the 1970s, but there are still opportunities in this area. Chen Jiwen naturally has ambitions. If he could have a car brand and grow it, it would not be in vain. Of course, it is impossible to play with cars in Hong Kong. In Hong Kong's future, even the automotive parts industry cannot be played with. After an hour, Zhang Yunxue, who had seen all the models and tried a few, returned. She chose a BMW, which was not big and suitable for girls to drive. At the signal of Chen Jiwen, the salesperson brought the key. After receiving the key, Zhang Yunxue asked, "Can I drive this car now?" Chen Jiwen nodded and said, "Sure, you can transfer the ownership yourself in a few days." "Thank you very much, brother Wen. You are so kind to me," Zhang Yunxue said happily. Chen Jiwen touched her cheek and said, "It's a small idea. You can say anything else you want." For obedient beauties, he has always been tough with the ball. It's just a car, tens of thousands of Hong Kong dollars, and Zhang Yunxue has been losing him for several months. It's really hard work and knows how to repay. Every time Chen Jiwen just gives her a little bit of kindness, and she always repays it with a gushing spring. "I'm going to drive on the wilderness trail. Wenj, do you want to come with me?" Zhang Yunxue asked again. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Red Bull. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Red Bull. In September 1973, Star River Holdings, which had been established for 2 months, officially exceeded 100 employees, with only 20 of them being administrative and logistics personnel, while the rest were sales, procurement, legal personnel, and some senior management personnel with rich manufacturing backgrounds. The only task for these people at present is to focus on the well-known manufacturing companies in Hong Kong and view all the data information of these companies. After the recent oil crisis, Star River Holdings will inevitably start to acquire or invest in some potential and large-scale manufacturing enterprises, which can directly enter this market. This will greatly increase efficiency, and save at least 2 years of time compared to building a company from start to finish. However, it's not that you will sell someone if you want to acquire them. Overall, you still need to select several companies and ultimately try to seize one or two. Dozens of professionals from Xinghe Holdings are also trying their best to choose their targets, with 2 of the most important directions being factories for beverages and food or factories for electrical appliances. Chen Jiwen has also been busy lately, focusing on reviewing the detailed information of various manufacturing companies submitted by his subordinates, which contains a large amount of data. Although he cannot obtain the core secrets of these companies, as long as he spends some resources, obtains the export data of these companies from the port, and through the analysis of industry insiders and the size of the companies, he can roughly understand the situation. The submitted materials have a detailed analysis, but ultimately which company will be acquired still needs to be decided by the boss, Chen Jiwen. As these materials gradually became known to Chen Jiwen, he realized that he underestimated Hong Kong's manufacturing industry a bit. Although Hong Kong's manufacturing industry has always been dominated by low-end, this low-end is actually compared to manufacturing powers such as RB Europe and America, and there are also some strong companies in Hong Kong. For example, Xinghe Electric, which mainly produces motors, sells its products to dozens of countries and is also a local supplier of RB Toyota. Global Electronics, which produces radios, produces over 500,000 radios per month. Xinghe Group, which mainly produces watches, produces millions of watches of various types every year. There are countless other light industries such as home appliance outsourcing and clothing outsourcing, and there are also some companies that are not small in scale and even have their own brands. Although they all belong to light industry, there are actually not many countries or regions around the world that can achieve complete supporting facilities for light industry. The fundamental reason for this is that even the most basic light industry requires a large number of educated talents. In recent decades, Hong Kong has been able to do well in basic education, and it is definitely among the top in Asia. In addition, many people who come from the mainland to Hong Kong are also elites in business, and at the worst, literate, which naturally drives the rapid development of Hong Kong's industry. However, Chen Jiwen knows that the good days of Hong Kong's industry are coming to an end. The local market is too small to cultivate a strong local manufacturing industry, and can only rely on foreign markets. With a small local area and a lack of talent and fresh water, heavy industry cannot develop. Without heavy industry, light industry is just a castle in the air. In other parts of Asia, such as South Korea and the Gulf, in the early 1960s, the scale of industrial exports was far less than that of Hong Kong, but by the 1970s, it had already surpassed it on a large scale. This was due to the crushing population base, and when basic education was popularized in these areas, Hong Kong's advantages disappeared. However, due to the rapid development of the global economy and the large incremental market, the manufacturing economy in Hong Kong, a region with a declining overall ratio, is still developing at a high speed. The upcoming oil crisis has destroyed the huge demand in the European and American markets, and exports from various countries have shifted from incremental markets to stock or even decreased. Competition has immediately intensified, and all raw materials in Hong Kong's manufacturing industry are imported, many of which have a strong relationship with oil. With both the client and supply side sandwiched, Hong Kong's manufacturing industry will naturally be greatly impacted. The sound of knocking on the door outside sounded. Chen Sheng, Mr. Qin Zhihao is here. Come in, Chen Jiwen said. Chen Sheng. The person who came was a middle-aged man of about 40 years old, with a slightly chubby figure. He was wearing a pair of black framed glasses and couldn't even see when he smiled. Lao Qin, it's only been 2 months since I last worked, why have I gained so much weight again? Chen Jiwen put away the information and said with a smile, it seems that the food in Thailand is good. It's not that the food is good, it's because I drank too many drinks which made me nauseous. These drinks are all sugar, do you think I can maintain weight? Qin Jihao chuckled bitterly. Is there a lot of beverages in Thailand? Chen Jiwen asked in response. Yes, many. Coca-Cola is not very famous in Thailand, and there are also some supermarkets in big cities. Outside of big cities, they are mostly local beverages with too many varieties. Some people make chilled drinks on the roads, which are much cheaper than Coca-Cola, Qin Jihao said. Have you found a drink to relieve fatigue? Chen Jiwen asked with concern. Sending people to Thailand to find drinks is naturally to find the founder of an energy drink brand that has not yet emerged. Red Bull. After traveling back to Hong Kong last year, although Chen Jiwen has been indulging in extravagance, he still considers how to develop in the future during his time as a sage. He integrates his future knowledge in his mind and the information he has collected over several months, ultimately leading him to set a path for development in the fields of electronics and beverages and food. The former naturally does not need to be considered. In a few years, the electronics industry is about to usher in a big explosion, and computers are just the beginning. A series of electronic products and software around computers are countless super business opportunities, and even household appliances will start to be updated and replaced, forming a huge new market worth hundreds of billions of dollars. At this time, entering the market may not be as advanced as various international companies, but knowing the direction of development and getting a share of the entire electronics and electrical industry is definitely not a problem. The latter was a chance encounter. After a vigorous exercise, Chen Jiwen thought of Red Bull and only then remembered that Red Bull had not yet been born in 1972. You should know that Red Bull beverage is a beverage brand that is second only to the two major colas in later generations. Upon discovering this gap, Chen Jiwen naturally wanted to seize this opportunity. However, in 72 years, there was no money, so we had to plan. By the beginning of 73, after the huge profits in the stock market were cashed out, Chen Jiwen began to lay out his business. The first thing he did was to register the Red Bull brand globally and send people to Thailand to search for beverages in this area. I have found more than 10 types of beverages, and I feel that they can all restore my energy when I drink them, but the taste is not very good. The specific reason still needs to be analyzed in the laboratory, Qin Jihao said. Okay, let's start immediately. I only have 2 requirements. The first one is to recover my energy, and the second one is to have a good taste. Not to mention being so sweet, at least it shouldn't be unpleasant, Chen Jiwen nodded and said. Qin Jihao was actually the first person he recruited. He used to be a senior executive at a beverage factory under Taiku Group, who understood both technology and management. In the past 6 months, he has also formed his own small team in Hong Kong and set up a laboratory specifically to analyze beverages brought back from Thailand. I have already brought back many samples before, some of which have a refreshing effect, but there may be some shortcomings to some extent. Therefore, both sides work together, and Hong Kong continued to study and improve. Qin Jihao went to Thailand again to search for new varieties of beverages. Okay, if it doesn't work out, I'll go to Thailand again, Qin Jihao said. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. United Soda. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 United Soda, just send a few more hands, you'd better stay in Hong Kong. As for the drinks, just meet my basic requirements. Pursuing perfection is meaningless, Chen Jiwen thought for a moment. Coca-Cola, as the best-selling beverage globally, is it the best to drink? Actually, it's not the case. Many people like Pepsi, and even the later versions of Coca-Cola are not inferior to it. The simplest example is Libo in the 1980s. In the early 1990s, its sales went up, but it was because Jian Libo was better than Coca-Cola and Pepsi. It's not necessarily the case, but in fact, the main effect may be due to the first mover effect, where the brand takes the lead and advantages emerge, making it difficult for others to catch up. The same goes for Red Bull in later generations. After Red Bull became popular, Lianhua also launched energy drinks, but they were no match at all. Even cars are the same. Volkswagen's position and market in later domestic markets, although it also has certain capabilities, to some extent, it also occupies the advantage of entering the market first. Of course, the pioneers must also have sufficient capital, otherwise they will still be beaten to death by big capital, such as Jeep Motors. Of course, Jeep also has its own place to die. Okay, I understand what you mean, Qin Zhihao nodded and said. He used to be responsible for the Coca-Cola business at Taikoo Group, so naturally he knew about beverages, mainly relying on brands. Chen Jiwen continued, I have already registered the Red Bull brand globally. I asked you to stay because I wanted you to take charge of something. After speaking, Chen Jiwen picked out a copy from the document just now and handed it over. After reading the document for a while, Qin Zhihao asked, Chen Sheng wants to acquire the United Soda plant. There aren't many big soda companies in Hong Kong either. This one is the most suitable one, Chen Jiwen said with a smile. Building a factory from scratch is Chen Jiwen's least favorite way of operating because money can be invested directly, but the people, team, culture, and technical experience of the factory cannot be cultivated overnight, let alone the difficulty of building terminal market channels. Therefore, acquiring a mature manufacturer is the simplest, even if it is worth spending more money. However, unlike other factories, the beverage industry has strong exclusivity. After a long period of market competition, many brands will not be able to persist, either disappearing or being acquired. This can be seen in the later mainland, where the beverage market flourished in the 1990s, and after 20 years, only a few giants were left to compete. Although the Hong Kong market is not large, from the 1950s to the present, there have only been a few beverage factories with some scale left. The largest of them is the Taikoo Soda Factory under the Taikoo Group, which mainly engages in contract manufacturing for Coca-Cola. Local consortia and international brands have naturally strengthened their strength, and other soda factories can only take a roundabout route, while also slowly declining. The scale of the United Soda plant is indeed not small, and I heard it has been losing money all along. However, it belongs to Lijia, and it is not so easy for us to acquire it. Qin Zhihao asked with some concern. You don't have to worry about it. We're not professionals in the field of acquisitions, just leave it to professionals, Chen Jiwen said with a smile. If we really can't acquire it, just switch to something else. There will always be one that suits us. After buying land and drinking milk, Chen Jiwen became a super VIP customer of HSBC. Even the current general manager of the future large class, Shen Bai, had arranged for him to have lunch with him. There was not much discussion, but Shen Bai also promised to do his best to help him acquire some companies, but he didn't know which ones at that time. As the largest bank in Hong Kong, in addition to making money through banking methods, HSBC is best at providing investment advice to many companies, among which the most skilled is mergers and acquisitions, because in the process of mergers and acquisitions, both parties need a lot of firepower, and this firepower naturally can only be found in banks. Although HSBC is definitely black, it also has the ability and resources. As long as professionals can achieve Chen Jiwen's strategic investment goals, he is willing to pay professional fees. Okay, since that's the case, I'll just focus on researching this energy drink, Qin Zhihao nodded and said. After a while, Qin Zhihao stood up and left. Chen Jiwen said to his assistant Angel, help me make an appointment with Shen Bai from HSBC. Okay, a crisp voice came from outside the house. The next day, in the presidential suite of the Hilton Hotel in Hong Kong, Chen Jiwen once again met the egg friend Shen Bai, who later became known as the Chinese business community in Hong Kong. The reason why they are called egg friends is because the outer layer of eggs is white and the inner layer is yellow, which is similar to the style of Xinbai's strong support for Chinese-funded companies during his 10-year tenure. Although Xinbai's actions were certainly for himself and HSBC, to a certain extent, the rise of Chinese capital in the 1980s also relied on his support. Chen Jiwen now naturally needs the support of HSBC. In the 1970s and 1980s in Hong Kong, if he wanted to do business in Hong Kong, he would inevitably need to cooperate with HSBC. Mr. Xinbai, long time no see, Chen Jiwen shook hands politely. Long time no see, Chen Sheng. I heard that you have established your own company. Congratulations. I think in 10 years, your reputation in the business world of Hong Kong will definitely be very prominent. Xinbai also boasted politely. 10 years is too long for me to wait, Chen Jiwen smiled and said, I think 3 years should be around. Does Chen Sheng have any plans? Xinbai became interested, and Chen Jiwen couldn't have invited him for tea. Chen Jiwen said, I want to acquire a company, United Soda Plant. United Soda Factory. Xinbai hesitated for a moment, seeming to think for a while before remembering. He asked with some confusion, did Chen Sheng acquire this company for its land? It's just that this piece of land is for industrial use, so developing real estate can be quite troublesome. I have some good commercial land in my hands, and Chen Sheng will definitely be interested. Mr. Xinbai, I didn't buy the soda factory for the land, Chen Jiwen said helplessly. This was actually expected. Last night, when he talked to his father about this matter, it was also believed that it was for the land. After all, the location and area of this soda factory's land are very good, but the only downside is that it is industrial land. If we want to change it to commercial, we still need to go through the Hong Kong government's change process and spend some more money. Chen Sheng is doing it for soda. Xinbai couldn't believe it. In what era do you still work in industry, and even if you work in industry, you still have to choose the soda industry that was hit hard by Coca-Cola? Chen Jiwen nodded and said, yes, Mr. Xinbai, I am planning to enter the beverage industry and want to acquire a ready-made factory. This should not be difficult for HSBC, right? P.S. My family may have sheep. The latest updates will depend on the situation, at least one change, and try to make 2 changes as much as possible. Seeking follow-up reading and collecting, I feel like my grades are not very good. End of this chapter.